Hey guys, it's Rhonda with Blessed in the Mess. Today I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of a background of how Blessed in the Mess got established, what was going on in my life at the time, what the purpose was for it, and just to kind of catch you up on things and what the mission is and my goal moving forward. At the time when I had the idea to start the page, Blessed in the Mess, Troy, my husband, and I, we were not together at the time. I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant with our son, and Troy had been asked to leave my house. That was the third time, I believe it was. The first year of our marriage was extremely difficult with his drinking. So it had been 3 times that I'd asked him to leave. He had actually probably just come back into the house, and he stayed sober about 3 weeks and he left again. He was gone for Christmas. He actually spent Christmas in a mental hospital. He had been staying with a friend, and the friend sent him to the local hospital when he was unresponsive from a binge, passed out. And so he ended up at a mental hospital for a few days for evaluation. And then when he got out of there, his family put him in a local motel for, I guess, several weeks it was. And of course, I felt sorry for him again, and he sounded like he was ready to get his act together, and we have a child coming. So, of course, I was in a very confused state, of mind of what to do with him. And one thing that was going on at the time was we weren't talking about what was going on in our life with anyone, other than my immediate family who could see what was going on. Nobody really knew. He didn't have any friends at the time. He had isolated himself from friends and family, and so we had no support system whatsoever. He didn't, he had me, but, because I was such a good support system for him before we got married, when he went through rehab, but my patience were very thin, and I literally couldn't take it anymore. And so he really had nobody. Well, I remember laying in bed one morning, and I guess you could say that I could sense that the Lord was telling me that we really needed to get a support system. And I just, Blessed in the Mess came to my mind because I did see the blessing in it. I mean, we had a son that was coming. That was a huge blessing. And I always knew that God would use it in some way. So just Blessed in the Mess came to my mind. And he and I had been separated for quite a while, weeks, I guess, at this point. And I think it was probably around January. And I took him to church with me one Sunday morning. And afterwards, I went back to his motel room. And I told him about this idea that I had about starting a support group on Facebook where we could no longer be silent about what we've been going through, but maybe we could help other people. Maybe other people could help us. And he was on board with it, as he generally was. And so we, I think, came back to my house. I think it was probably that day, came back to my house, and we jumped online and we created the page, and we both wrote, about a little bit about our journey in the information section. And we posted it, and then we had, several people who reached out to us who were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were struggling with all of this, and I struggle too, or my brother struggles. We had a few people who really could relate and reached out to us. And so we thought, okay, well, this is good. This is exactly, what we want this to do. And, help people, find answers, and just be a support group for each other. And, well, it didn't last very long because he ended up coming back into my home. I let him come back, and probably within probably another 3 weeks, because that was kind of the norm at the time, he ended up drinking and driving his youngest daughter. And that started another binge. And of course, that started a rift between the two of them and his other daughter. And so it got so bad that nobody wanted to even help him anymore, not even family. So he had no place to stay. And he had an uncle that lived out of state who had really no clue what had been going on for the last, 10, 15 years. So he stepped up and decided to take him in. So Troy went away for 6 weeks, about 6 weeks before the baby was born. And he had some revelation while he was there, kind of understanding his past and his childhood, and we shared some things over the phone. We got to talk a good bit, because we hadn't been talking at all for months. I mean, even when we were together, I mean, he was living in the house. If he was drinking, he was incoherent, I guess you could say. So we did some catching up and building our relationship, and then he came home right before our son was born, like 10 days or so before our baby was born. And then, of course, he stayed sober those 10 days, and then the baby was born, and then within a month, he was drinking again. And the cycle continued for 18 months, because our son was 18 months old when he went to the Home of Grace to get treatment. So during that time, that 18 months, you know, I would post things occasionally on the Blessed in the Mess page, but we kind of went right back to the habit, you know, the pattern of, you know, being quiet and not getting help and not reaching out and pretending like what was happening wasn't happening. I was never able to get him out of the house again. He refused to leave after the baby was born, but his drinking continued. And it continued until he began drinking and driving with the baby. And that's when I was like, this is it. And, you know, I gave him an ultimatum. Either you're going to go get help, or I'm going to get an attorney, and this is over. And he chose a divorce for a couple of days, and then he came back and he said, okay, I'll go. What's the number? And he went and got treatment for 3 months. And then he came out and he stayed sober just shy of 2 years. And so when he got out, Blessed in the Mess was already established. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that it got established after he got sober, but it did not. It got established in the middle of the mess. And so, but it was a good foundation, and, you know, we were able to, you know, share things. Both of us were able to share, you know, posts and videos and information on the page. And so it kind of held its own for the 2 years that we were together and he was sober. And then, and in the meantime, you know, he and I actually had a ministry. You know, we called ourselves Blessed in the Mess, and we started a class at the Home of Grace. Then we called it Fighting for Families, and we helped the families that had clients that were in the program. We met with the families and explained to them what was going on through the process of the rehab, the Home of Grace. And so we really enjoyed that. That was really really a blessing to be able to give back and be involved, and is definitely where my heart was, being that I've struggled with all of this with Troy and my son, who had an addiction problem and also went through the Home of Grace. So so we continued, you know, with the page, but then he relapsed again, and I had a lot of revelation before he relapsed of what was really going on with him, and I came to realize that he had personality disorder. And that, you know, I had always thought that his problem was alcohol. You know, once we get the alcohol out of our lives, life will be great. Problem was the alcohol left, but the problems didn't in a lot of cases. And so it just took me quite a while to figure out exactly what I was dealing with and what he was suffering with. And so he ended up relapsing, and I had a much better understanding of what was really going on, and I knew that I really had no control to help him. I had no means of changing his personality. It was definitely going to be a God thing if he was going to be delivered from really the demons that are in his head and talking to him, and the voices he's hearing, and then the behaviors that he's doing to silence the voices was the alcohol. And he said it many a times that the squirrels would show up. He referred to them as squirrels, that they would show up and they would start talking, and the only way he could shut them up was with alcohol. And so I know he was suffering. I know he was suffering from evil spirits, however you want to call it. It was not of this world, and it was in his mind. And so I ended up getting him out of my home again. And it was the last time he left. He never came back. And he continued to struggle with addiction for 15 more months until he died. And he died from a drug and alcohol overdose. Whether that was intentional or not is not something I know for sure, but I suspect that he was tired and done with the suffering. And he had been suicidal many times before. And I wish I could have done more, but I realized that I'm not God. I can't fix it. I just knew I had a child to protect. I spent the last 15 months of his life doing all that I could to protect our son from him, because he was out of control when he was drinking. And I wasn't going to let anything happen to my child. And I think any mother would relate to that and agree with me that that was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, that's what it came down to. But I continue with Blessed in the Mess, because I've always felt like I was called to this, to share, to open up, to be honest, to be real, to talk about things that are taboo, if you will, because, you know, there's such a stigma about addiction. And little did I know when I started this that we were dealing with more than an addiction. You know, we're dealing with a personality disorder. We're dealing with him struggling with this really his whole adult life. And he didn't even know what was going on. And I did confront and share with him the things that, you know, I was learning about his behaviors, and he didn't really want to talk about it. So, and I understand that. But I feel like there could have been some help for him had he been open to the idea and maybe a little more humble and less prideful about what was really going on. But I do realize that he had a major battle going on, and I had to choose to get out of that battle with him. For my own sanity, my own safety, my own health, my child's safety. So I can't say that I regret that at all, but I continue to use Blessed in the Mess to help other people. Now, not only with those that are struggling with addiction or love people who are struggling with addiction, but like I said, I always thought that once the bottle went away, the problems would go away, and it didn't. So I realized that, you know, there's probably a lot of people out there who are struggling with addiction. That's not the root of the issue. And maybe if they understood more what was really going on, that the enemy was using, you know, this attack with voices in your head, and having all these horrible thoughts that you're trying to escape from, really can, in the psychology world, can be classified as a personality disorder. In the spirit world, you know, it's classified as, you know, being tormented by the enemy. You can look at it from two perspectives. And so I've seen, and since I've been studying all of this, I see it from both perspectives. I see it from, I guess you could say, the worldly perspective, and I see it from the spiritual perspective. And so my goal is to share what I've learned, because I know I'm not the only one going through this, and hopefully, you know, get some people to see what's really going on, because I do believe that there is hope. As I began to study and understand this, and as the Lord revealed more and more to me, I came across a ministry called Restored to Freedom. I can't really tell you how I came across it, but I was studying and Googling and trying to learn as much as I could about cluster B personality types, narcissism, some other things that we'll get into later that, you know, I'm like, okay, this is a symptom, this is bizarre, this is not normal, this is what's happening, what is going on, what is the root here, where is this coming from? And so I came across Nelson's ministry. He has a Facebook page, and he does live videos every day, and he's been a wealth of information. He went through a lot of the same things with his second wife that I went through with Troy, and he's probably the ministry that I have hung on to the most, because he is seeing people get freed from these spirits, whereas the psychology world will tell you there is no hope for these people. And many places that you do research will say, you know, a psychiatrist or a psychologist can diagnose these personality disorders, but they can't they can't fix it. You can't medicate it. So you have to just you have to deal with it, such as life. But when you're dealing with a narcissist or some of the other cluster B personality types, there is a strong sense of pride that comes with those. And so they don't really want to deal with it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They're very good at deceiving the psychiatrist, if you can even get them into counseling. And so you almost have, if you're going to do anything about it, you almost have to tackle it from a spiritual perspective. And so Nelson, this is a man who travels the country, and he gets people delivered. And he has seen many, many, many hearts changed, lives saved, marriages saved. And I actually got certified with his ministry back in January. And it is a deliverance ministry. And so the journey continues with Blessed in the Mess. And, you know, my goal is to be a source of information. And the best way to know about anything is to have gone through it yourself. And I have definitely been through some stuff. So I'd be foolish not to share, especially when I feel the Lord's calling me to do that. So, you know, I want to continue with Blessed in the Mess and share what I've been through, continue to share videos and share my story, always post, you know, information that I think is helpful, that, you know, you can have that Me Too moment, like, oh, you know, this is really, I must not be crazy. This is really happening, you know, like somebody else is going through the same exact thing. That's what kind of started helping me, was when I started to study and research and try to figure out what was going on, and then realize I'm not alone, because, oh my gosh, this woman's going through the same exact thing, and this one, and this one, and this one. And there's a lot of support groups out there, especially on Facebook, where people can share their stories. Nelson also has a support group as well, which is a different page on Facebook. But, you know, I think, unfortunately, that as we get closer and closer to end times, we're going to see more and more and more of this, because the enemy is becoming more and more good at destroying lives and marriages. And I think we, as the body of Christ, are called to battle. And my battle with Troy, as a partner with him, battling against what he was dealing with, was unsuccessful, because he didn't play a part in the battle. He really didn't want to acknowledge that we were in a battle. He couldn't see it from the spirit world like I did. And so he suffered and ultimately lost his life. So I will continue with Blessed in the Mess. I will continue, hopefully, to encourage you, inform you, educate you. All I'm doing is sharing what I already know and what I've experienced. I am no professional by any means. I don't call myself one, don't claim to be one, but, you know, I know that my story will relate to some people and could start their journey through understanding and healing, because you do have to heal yourself. You do have to put yourself first, because the spirit that operates in them wants you dead. It really does. The enemy has come to kill, steal, and destroy, and he will destroy as many lives as he can by any means possible. So I hope that I will be able to encourage you and maybe point you in a direction that could actually and hopefully change the direction of your life if you're in a mess like I found myself in. So thanks for coming. Thanks for letting me share. And I'll continue with Blessed in the Mess. I hope you continue to stay blessed in your mess. Thanks.